Hey, what's up guys? Joe Davis here from Right Way Home Solutions. In this video, we're going to kind of briefly explain the difference between an option period and earnest money and what's their importance in what we do, right? So when you're going to the seller, the homeowner or the realtor, and you're putting on putting the contract on the property, you're going to have to fill out all the terms of the contract. And one of the most important elements of the contract is the earnest money and the option money. So what I would do right now is just write this down and just repeat this a number of times until it sticks. And that is that the option money protects the earnest money. Okay? The option money protects the earnest money. So here at Right Way, what we generally do is we formulate our earnest money 1% of the purchase price. So if we're buying a house for $60,000, what is our earnest money? $600. If we're buying a $100,000 house, $1,000, $200,000, $2,000, and so on. Right? That shows that we have skin in the game. It shows that we are a serious buyer. We're not putting down $100 for earnest money. We're saying we are committing to this property by putting 1% of our offer. Right? If you're new at wholesaling, maybe that's not a possibility right now because you are going to have to deliver your earnest money to the title company. But keep in mind, if the seller or the realtor is well versed in real estate, and you go and you are putting a contract on a $200,000 house, and you put $100 earnest money, they're going to see right through you, right? They're going to see that you're not a serious buyer. Okay, they're gonna know that you're wholesaling it from your verbiage, and it has potential to lose a deal. So we put 1% of the earnest money, and we protect ourselves on the termination period, right? On our option period. So typically we like to get between 5 and 10 days on our option period, and we will put out between $50 and $100 in total, right? For that period, that option or termination period. So that $50 or $100 is protecting our 1% on our earnest money, right? So we would have, let's say for example, we have 5 days option, right? We have paid $50, right, for 5 days option, or $10 per day, right? It's $50 total. It's not $50 per day. And I know some people get confused on that. They see option period 5 days. They think that they have to pay $50 a day. But no, the $50 would be for the entire 5 days. If we decide to back out within that 5 days, we would have every legal right to receive our earnest money back. And that's how it's protected, okay? So if we get a contract signed on the 20th and it's 5 days, the first day of the option period will start on the following day. Okay, so if we got it signed on Monday, day one of that 5-day protection period of our earnest money, right? If we got it signed on Monday, would start Tuesday. Okay, so always, to be safe, always consider every day as part of the option. A lot of wholesalers out there will get it wrong and they'll believe that the weekend wasn't part of the option day. Always count it. So every single day. So Monday, so Tuesday is day one, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Okay. If for whatever reason you were not intending to complete the purchase, you couldn't find a buyer, you overpaid it, you got your rehab wrong, then you would be sending in a termination of contract and a release of earnest, right? Say, okay, we stuck to our contractual agreement of letting you know within 5 days, that's what we paid you the $50 for. We're not going to purchase this property. Here's us coming out of the property or backing out with the termination of contract, and here's the release of earnest money to go to us because we're within our legal right per the contract to do that, right? So that's the only way you're going to get the earnest money back. So the buyer and the seller are both signing the release of earnest. So you as the buyer, you are still relying on the seller to release that money. Okay, and sometimes what happens is the seller is going to be a little bit annoyed that you didn't go through with the purchase of their property because mentally they had already sold it, right? Even though you're within your contractual right to back out because you paid $50 for those 5 days, sometimes it is difficult to get that seller to sign. So always make sure that you do everything by the contract, okay? There is some recourse if they're not signing your release of earnest. You can put a memo against the property if it came to that. They're just not signing it. Title is still open, right, until they release the earnest. So it is in their interest to sign that release, that it doesn't come back on them, and you would have to let their representation or them know that. Okay. So real estate is a very litigious industry. Get to know the contracts very well. Here at Right Way, we're based in Houston. We're in Texas, so we use all of our contracts are promulgated by the state of Texas. So you really want to know these contracts inside out. You want to understand the termination period. You want to understand the earnest money, okay, so that you never have a legal issue, right? So the earnest money is going to go to the title company, and the option money is going to go to the seller. So if you'll see on the contract on page 1, it's going to describe who's the escrow officer and who's the title company and what is the amount of earnest money, right? And then on page 8 of the contract, you're going to see the termination period. The termination period is going to outline how much money we are paying for how many days, right? So the last day of the option is the final day. So if we had 5 days and we did it on the 20th and it started on the 1st, right? On the final day of the option, you have to send in your termination to title by 5 p.m. If you were at 5:01, 5:02, 5:10, you lost internet in Starbucks and you couldn't send it out, well, you were broken the contract. You have not terminated within that period. Therefore, the earnest money should be going to the seller. So they're going to say, if you're terminating, fine. Well, you can sign the release to the seller. If you don't know your dates, you put yourself at a lot of risk. Okay. People always ask, well, how do you get sued in real estate? Well, you failed to perform on the contract, right? Maybe the seller had multiple offers within that time where you had the property under contract and you had your 5 days. They had multiple other offers. Maybe they were even higher than your offers, okay? But then when they told them that they already had a buyer, they're proceeding with the transaction, and you break the contract and say, hey, I'm not purchasing, and you're outside of your option period, then, I have seen sellers go after buyers to either recover what they could have sold it for or to force them to purchase the contract or purchase the property per the contract. I've also seen it on the flip side, and it happens a lot more often, where the buyer goes after the seller because the seller pulled out and they didn't perform to their contract, right? The buyer's got an appraisal, the buyer's gotten a survey, they've spent a lot of money and time and effort, and then the seller decides, I no longer want to sell my property. Well, a contract is there for a reason, and you need to know the terms and be very aware of the dates on your contract. Don't leave it up to your transaction coordinator or somebody else or the title company to tell you the dates. Have written down or on your CRM that our option period ends at 5 p.m. on the 26th, right? We had the 5 days. On the 26th, if I didn't find my buyer at that time or I have no intent to close on that property, I need to be sending in my termination and my release of earnest to the title company, and obviously copy in the seller or copy in the realtor so that they know, right? If it's a relationship that you're trying to build, I would definitely let them know that it's coming. Don't hit them at 4:59 with the termination or release of earnest, and not kind of give them any explanation why you backed out, right? So what's the number one reason that someone backs out of a contract? It's the price. Okay, so any property is purchasable at the right price. So if you're terminating a contract, it means that you couldn't find a buyer and you're not confident enough that we can close on this property and list it. So it means you overpaid for the property, whether you miscalculated your ARV or you miscalculated your rehab. So what am I going to try to do? If the seller is that motivated and I am sending in a termination and a release of earnest, I am going to give them the opportunity to reduce the amount of the purchase price to something where I know that I no longer need an option, right? I know that it's good enough of a deal. So I am sending in an amendment to the contract, which is going to have listed of what my price is that I need the property at. So let's say we contracted for 90, but the real price was 80 because I didn't watch the other videos and I didn't do my rehab properly. I didn't do my 5 majors, and I undercooked the rehab drastically, right? So I need this property at 80. So I'm contacting my my seller or my seller's representation and say, my contractor bids were a lot more than I thought. I understand if you're going to go and sell this for closer to what we had originally agreed, but I'm also giving you the opportunity to reduce the price to $80,000, and in that instance, I will go away with the option period. That it's definitely going to be a deal now, right? So again, just can't reiterate that enough. Know your dates. Know that your option money protects your earnest money. And it's really as simple as that. Your day one starts after the executed date. You're also going to find that on page 8 of our check promulgated contract. So once both parties sign, it becomes an executed contract. When one party signs and you're waiting on the other party, it's not executed yet. So the option period starts, if you look under the termination, there's a date. It starts the first day after that. Anything needs to be communicated with the title company so that everyone is aware and everyone has everything documented. As soon as you get your contract back from the seller, here at Rightway, we have a transaction coordinator who's going to open up title. If you're watching this video, if you're new to wholesaling, I would advise to use your state promulgated contract, and I would advise to know that inside out. You're going to have a lot less headache and potential litigation if you're using a state promulgated contract, rather than a single page purchase and sale agreement. So I've got my contract from my seller. It has the title company outlined of who we're using. It has the earnest money. It has all the other terms in there. Who's paying for closing costs. It has the option amount and the option day. As soon as I get that, generally you have a time period to deliver that to the title company and to the seller, right? So if you don't do that within that period, if you really study that termination period, you might deliver your option money too late, and it makes that void. It makes it where you no longer have the right to terminate that property. So I have to give them that $50 within 3 days. Otherwise, that earnest money is not protected, right? So that is why when we get a contract, we immediately send it to the title company, copying in the seller and the representation. We immediately get our earnest money over to the title company, and we immediately get our option money directly to the seller, right? So there is some talk about the way that things work changing slightly, especially here in Texas. I'm not sure where you're watching this, but we are sending in, or we will be sending next year, earnest money and option money together, right, within that 3-day period. And the title company will be responsible for dishing out the option money to the seller and keeping an eye on it, and everything that's going on, right? So I would always just make sure that you copy the escrow officer and be upfront and communicate with your seller as much as possible. We cover in another video about renegotiating right towards the end of the option. The best thing that you can do in this industry and in real estate is to be upfront. Don't ignore those calls from the realtor asking, are you backing out? Don't ignore calls from the seller asking them, did you get your foundation quote, right? Always be upfront and honest, and it's really going to help you go a long way. And it's really going to help you when you go and you have to make that tough call, right? It's a tough call to call up the seller and say, I need $10,000 off, or I'm going to have to back out of this contract. So be upfront and communicate, know your contracts, know your dates, and know how it all operates. And if you get all of those in place, the option money and the earnest money, it's not a big deal, right? We send out multiple earnest money every day, and we also send out multiple option monies. Okay. If you're watching this video and you're very new to it, and you're getting started and you're worried about putting 1% of your earnest money, reach out to us. We do have our JV platform, jvtherightway.com, and we can also kind of help you, have some advice of how you can circumvent that, right? If it's your first contract and it's a $200,000 purchase because you're in a high-end market, you might not want to put out $2,000, right? So reach out to us. We're always here to help. We can kind of tell you some methods of how you can get around not having to put everything that you have in your earnest money and sweating it for the next 5 or 6 days until you find that cash buyer, right? So our email is down below, and if you're a Rightway member here, it's very easy the way that we do stuff. You're putting it in your CRM, you're putting it in what we use is called Pipedrive. Your earnest money is there, your options money there, your contract is attached, and then we have reminders, right? We're very specific on knowing exactly when that option period is going to end, and if it's not sold, you know, we're sending that in. So thanks for joining us. Again, we look forward to having you. We love having you guys watch these videos. Hope it provides you a lot of content. Option and earnest money is pivotal to real estate, and you know, it's a very litigious industry, so know these contracts inside out and you're good to go. Thank you.